Hello, in today's video, let's talk about standard sets. As the complexity of design continues to increase, we need to have some sort of regularization when it comes to actually converting your software or the coding that you've done into hardware, right? And so normally we have a lot of tools which convert the Verilog or the VHDL code that you've written into a gate level or transistor level design. So previously there used to be what is known as fully custom design, where essentially everything is done from scratch. But with the rise in the size of the chips and the complexity of chips, that has become increasingly difficult. And so almost all design houses use automated synthesis and automated place and route tools to place the various cells together to create the layout of the structure. And this therefore requires designs to be standardized. And so what we have is, for all logic gates, we have standardized designs available, and models are built on those standardized designs, which are then used for timing analysis, area analysis, power analysis, etc. So what we'll do now is we'll look at some aspects of standard cell design and look at what kind of characterizations are typically done on these standard cells. So first, let's talk about a typical design flow. So the design flow is broken into two parts: a front-end part of the flow and a back-end part of the flow. So the front-end flow begins with the system specifications. Once those are in place, the designer then creates the RTL code for that particular system specified, right? Now this RTL code is then synthesized into a logic code. So the process where the RTL code is converted to logic is known as synthesis, and eventually what comes out of synthesis is a gate level code, right? So in the front end, your system specification is eventually converted into a gate level code. We then move into the backend part of the design flow, which deals with how these gates are going to be laid out, what's the layout going to look like, etc. So there we begin with what is known as the floor planning and defining the power grid. That is, how is power going to be supplied to the various parts of the design. What is then followed is known as placement and routing. So once we know a rough idea of what the blocks of the design are going to be, you end up doing the placement on that and then doing routing of the signals through the various blocks. It is then followed. Normally all designs have a clock because many of them have tokenized data. So we're going to deal with a clock tree. So the clock tree is defined next. Once all these parts of the design are put together and the gates are put together, we do what is known as a DRC check and an LVS check. A DRC stands for a design rule check, and LVS stands for a layout versus schematic check. So once the gates have been converted into layouts, they are extracted out again, and we confirm that whatever was the intended gate layout has shown up in the layout, number one. And we also make sure that when we have done this routing, when we have done the placement, we have not violated any design rules that have been specified by the foundry. This has to be done very carefully, especially because violation of design rules has an impact on the yield of the chip. So you want to ensure that your layout is DRC clean. Once that is done, then a timing analysis is performed on the actual design. Now this design is a layout level design, so you're going to have all the various parasitics that need to be extracted of it. For example, a wire would have a resistance and a capacitance. So that particular length of the wire and its resistance and its capacitance is going to be used for the timing analysis. So there are a couple of iterations of this. One which goes through for optimization. So you want to reduce the overall area of the chip. You want to improve the timing. And so there are a couple of iterations that go through, and the final design is then sent for tape out, right? And so many a times what happens is timing would have cleared at the previous gate level design, but once you've extracted all the parasitics post layout, timing may not be met. And so that would require you to go back and either look back at your floor planning, try and rearrange a couple of cells so as to get your timing met, right? So hence a few iterations are required to eventually get your layout tape out ready. Now if you think about the library, now the library is nothing but the folder which contains all the cells that you might have to use in your design. So this library basically, for example, would contain the NAND cell, the NOR cell, the AND, ORs, the inverters, latches, etc. Right? So first thing is you have to always ensure that all the layouts that are there in these cells, all of them are hierarchical. And this helps with automation. The shapes must be regularized so as to facilitate the automatic place and route tool in placing and routing wires, right? And so you don't want to draw any asymmetric or uneven shapes which may make putting them together difficult. So think of this as a jigsaw puzzle and you're trying to put these various pieces together. So if they are standardized, then the algorithm that is required to put these things together tends to be simpler. Now, as I said, the design library has to be functionally complete, which means it needs to include flip-flops, latches with the proper signals, so enables and reset signals. It needs to have tri-state buffers, inverters, and the NANDs and NORs. And this library must be characterized for the various features that we care about in the design. For example, delay, power dissipation, the total capacitance at the input and the output, the tri-state quality of the particular output. In case you're using tri-state buffers, you want to ensure that the resistance is high enough. You want to calculate what that is, right? So all these characterizations need to be done during the design of the standard cell library. And finally, we should also have Verilog models, each of which connect to the specific gate, and the Verilog model must be complete with all the pins included and specify clearly what the pin directions are. And finally, because we don't know how the routing works, we need to have cells with various drive strengths in case we need to drive long lines, for example. So if you look at some of the layout alternatives, I'm just showing a very simple point to illustrate. Remember, the place and route tool is going to place gates one after the other, right? Now, so if you think about the various options you have, if you have different height cells, then depending on where the input and output pins of the various gates are, you might end up creating an haphazard design which looks like this. And now if the second array needs to come and abut itself here, it may not be possible to abut snugly here, leading to a waste of silicon area. The other way to do it is, which is most common, is basically have fixed height cells. So you fix one of the dimensions of the standard cell. For example, in this case, I've fixed the height of the cell and the width can float. So that way what happens is when you have to place these cells, a sort of regular feature comes to this particular layout, and so it helps with placing the cells together easier. You can also think of having a standard cell library which supports integer multiples of heights. So in that case, you can think of stacking up these cells such that even number of these cells one on top of the other might be equal to the height of a third cell. Right? So typically these two options are more common when you're doing standard cell library design. Now how should a design of a cell look like? So remember, every cell needs to have a VDD and a ground. So there is a power line for VDD, there is a power line for ground. And as I mentioned, we are going to design cells such that they have the same height but with variable width. Now within the cell, we create the N well on the top and the P well at the bottom. So the PMOS transistors are going to sit in the top. Try as much as possible to have the diffusion as a single row. And similarly, the NMOS are going to sit in the bottom. Again, as much as possible, share diffusion as possible. And therefore, whenever we draw diffusion, we always draw the diffusion horizontally, and the poly of the gate layer is drawn vertically. And make sure that all gates have separate well and substrate contacts. That way ensure that the resistance associated with the well and substrate contact is not very large. In that case, grounding of these wells becomes much better than having one ground for multiple shared wells. Now, if you look at synthesis and PNR, right, they are very tool specific. So depending on the vendor that your particular place of work or your school has, the synthesis tools may have difficulties with certain styles. Hence, it's important that when you design these standard cells, you make sure you know specifically what is the synthesis and PNR tool you need to use, and those will have certain requirements given which you need to follow when you're laying out the standard cells. And some tools might even require static cells to be present even if all the sequential cells are dynamic. So again, this is something which is tool specific, and so you need to make sure that your cells are designed in such a way that the tool can work with them in the most optimal fashion. Now let's look at a typical floor plan. Again, this is a very simple illustrative floor plan just to tell you what are the typical trade-offs associated. So you see different kinds of cells are placed within a block, right? And each of these cells have different functions. So for example, if you look at these blue cells, these are the cells which are going to be doing, for example, logic or some sort of an FSM. And so these cells are going to be arranged abutting each other such that VDD and power lines are shared between adjacent cells. And that way you end up saving area, because ultimately the goal is you want to make this design as compact as possible. One, that's going to reduce the cost of fabrication, and two, that's also going to reduce the probability of having long lines in your design. Long lines means larger delays. You also have IO pads. So typically every part of your block is going to have certain IO pins, right? So your chip has to have some IO pins, and remember, these IO pins are less in number and they're typically associated with these large pads. And so if you look at this large pad, this has a large capacitance. So especially when you're drawing out a certain signal from logic onto this IO pad, you need to ensure that this path is sized up properly so that the signal speed to the IO path is not overly slow. And the third thing you have is you have to arrange the power lines in such a way that you can place the ground and power connectors as close as possible. Again, this is to reduce the power and the delay associated with delivery of VDD and ground to the cells. Now, what are the kinds of characterization one needs to do on these cells? So first thing is timing, right? So timing needs to be characterized for varying fan out whenever you construct a standard cell. In addition, you need to characterize the impact of the input slope, because depending on how you're going to be doing design, you may not be using the optimal FO4 sizing, either due to some power constraint or due to some other constraint. So therefore, understanding what the input slope might be and what its effect on delay would is absolutely critical in having an accurate estimate for delay. So in a data path, for example, the delay depends on the load, sizing and the fan out. So you need to model all these accurately. Again, this step is very critical because eventually if you're going to use your tool, you want to reduce the delta between what is happening at the gate level to what is happening post layout. So having a good model of the standard cell will reduce the delta that might occur between a post gate level simulation versus a post layout simulation. Now, power estimation also will have to be done carefully, and you need to include the various components of power. Likely would be short circuit power, leakage power, dynamic power, etc. And the dynamic power is going to be dependent on the load, so you'll have to do this characterizing for various loads. Additionally, some of the gates might require characterizing the input cap charging time, etc. So that needs to be also considered during timing and power characterization. Now, just a side note on the timing model. So we've looked at linear delay model extensively in our videos, and while the linear delay model is very easy to use, we've also looked at that it has a lot of limitations. So when you use it with a grain of salt. And many a times for some timing critical paths, we use lookup tables rather than using the linear delay model. Now, if you're going to use the linear delay model, you need to characterize the following things. First, the intrinsic delay of the gate, the sensitivity to slope, that is how is the delay depend on the input rise and the fall times, the output resistance, and this tells you the delay dependent on the load cap. So depending if your load cap increases, knowing the output resistance, you get a handle on the delay of the gate. In sequential cells, you need to characterize for the setup time because that is critical for determining the sequential overhead. You need to characterize the input and the output caps, especially if you want an accurate power estimation. And so if you think about the delay is the intrinsic delay of the gate plus the effort delay plus the slope delay. So this is the linear delay model which takes into account the various factors that might affect the delay across the gate. Now, as I said, if you have a timing critical design, the linear delay model tends to overestimate the delay, and so we sometimes use a non-linear model. And now this non-linear model tends to be lookup table based, and the synthesis tool performs the interpolation of the data. And so while this is useful to do in timing critical paths, this ends up causing a lot of work because you have to do a large number of simulations to create a lookup table that is predictive. And so that normally is a trade-off associated with using a non-linear model versus the simple linear delay model. In terms of power characterization, typical parameters that are characterized are the energy per transition at each and every pin of the gate, the leakage power through the gate, the input and output caps. Again, these are important again for characterizing the power. Also, this has to be done across temperature, because remember that you're characterizing these cells across a temperature range. And in most cases, what we do is we calculate what is the energy consumed, and then power is estimated based on the speed at which the particular circuit is operating. So to conclude, while most of the design flow is automated, having some sense of how standard cells are made and how they are characterized gives you an idea as to what are the kind of design choices you might need to make for a given system performance. And the ease of design, or rather to reduce the delay in design, it is very imperative that you have a thorough characterization of the library. And the better the library characterization is, the less there will be a mismatch between your gate level and layout level simulations, and less will be the mismatch to silicon. So hence, having this done well is critical to reduce your time to product. One thing or one caveat to keep in mind is that these characterizations of the data required are very tool specific. So it's very important to look up the manual of the tool that is being used in the design environment you have, and make sure that all those assumptions are clarified prior to running your simulations.